Okay, so we are reading Aghora, the left hand of God. We are on page 16 of the book and page 11 of the PDF.
Even if pure Tantra is beyond the reach of most Westerners, the Tantric attitude has much to offer. To consider some of the topics already considered, Western psychology can learn much from the Tantric concepts of personality and ego. The concept of individual constitution, not merely in the Ayurvedic sense of Vat, Pitta, and Kapha, but also the mental constitution of Sattva, Divya, Rajas, Vira, and Tamas, Pashu, suggests that people can be categorized according to what sort of approach will suit their temperament and therefore be more likely to work. Tantric herbal and mineral preparations are part of Ayurveda and can be evaluated for their efficacy. The whole physiology of sound and light can be revolutionized by examination of mantra of visualization.
So basically, what are we looking at? Tantra is not all about rituals, okay? It is also about personality development. It is about transcending the ego. It is becoming one with the whole. It talks about what is your propensity. Everyone has a propensity. What is your character and what will work for you and what will not work for you. Okay, not in the Hindu religion, actually, nothing is wrong. Everything is all right, but it depends on what your character and your propensity is. Okay, so Tantra allows everything, but depending on your nature, you adjust the processes to your character and your nature.
Some of these tantric attitudes are already being employed in the West, perhaps unknowingly. For example, cancer patients are sometimes instructed to visualize to encourage remission. One such visualization might be a school of piranha devouring the dead meat of the tumor mass. This is tantric in nature, the sacrifice of an undesirable personality, the cancer, to an objectified projection of nature, the piranha. Such visualizations are often effective, but because they are inherently combative, they are not as useful for promoting health, which is non aggressive, as they may be for cure. Tantra can suggest new and better visualizations which could positively increase the individual's stamina, vigor, and happiness while simultaneously eliminating the disease.
So again, visualization is a very, very major part of Tantra. So we spoke about Mansik Puja. Okay. So Mansik Puja has a higher darja, it has a higher level of consciousness than the normal ritualistic puja. And in Tantra, visualization plays a very, very major part. Now, when we look at the resilience grid also, whenever you are on the left side of the grid, you are in a depleting state of consciousness. When you're on the right side, you're in an uplifting state of consciousness. Now, over here, it says that whenever you are attacking someone, okay, aggression will always be on the left side of the grid. And let me tell you, no manifestation takes place when you're on the left side of the grid. So what he's saying over here is that Tantra will not ask you to to visualize aggressively. In fact, they will put you on the right side of the grid for visualization, which will promote upliftment and manifestation to take place. So again, when we are looking at our own self also, we have to really be aware as to what state of consciousness we are operating from. Are we operating from the left side of the grid or the right side of the grid? The more awareness we can bring to this small factor, it will actually create big shifts in our lives, according to me. I mean, of course, everyone has to try to do it, but where are you operating from becomes a very big question as far as I am concerned.
Visualization can also be extended to the other autoimmune diseases besides cancer. Since autoimmune disease occurs when the ego loses its ability to distinguish what is part of its organism and what is alien to it. Psychologically, this process is already being used in neuro-linguistic programming. Undesirable habits or personality quirks can be altered thereby without analysis, guilt, or trauma, and new traits can be added. Because there is no limit for self improvement, Tantra can be repeatedly employed to assist in adjustments.
So again, we are substituting one process with another process. So what is NLP? Neuro linguistic programming, we are going to have a talk on it also, is about setting a benchmark for yourself, seeing a process which is working for someone and imbibing it into your own system. Okay. Now, Tantra also is constantly looking out for any process which can enhance uh, the functioning of the system in which it is operating. So, constant growth is the process of Tantra. Ultimately, what is there? Oneness, right? But going there is a process that we go through every day. So, the less irritated you become, the less angry you become, the more resilience that you have. So, you're constantly building your repertoire, constantly building your strengths, and adding to your capabilities to take you to the ultimate state of consciousness, which is oneness. Okay, so self improvement tantra can be repeatedly employed to assist in adjustment. So you find something works or something doesn't work. If it's not working, you adjust it. So, like in awareness, we are constantly talking about our toolbox, right? Now, for example, one of the participants just shared that her mother came in and she got irritated, right? And she immediately employed a tool which allowed her to cool down immediately. So now what is that? You're using a tool to adjust your state of consciousness so that there is improvement in the behavior pattern, as well as creating happiness and equanimity in the environment around you. Okay, so how do you use the tool? So, Tantra is all about using processes to enhance ourselves.
For those who are already relatively healthy, Tantra can create deeper levels of harmony and health. Immortality may be generally unobtainable, but a long, healthy life is not, for which good immunity is required. In Sanskrit, immunity is Vyadhi Shamatva, which means literally forgiveness of the disease. By improper lifestyle and attitudes, we create conditions in our bodies and minds which are agreeable to certain beings, which accept our unspoken invitation and move in. Most of us despise the disease without realizing that we have invited it to ourselves. When one learns to forgive oneself and to forgive the disease its depredations, then the disease's return is effectively barred.
So, what is it? What is it talking about here? Again, a state of consciousness, a state from which we are operating. Now, if we have a disease, it implies that there is an imbalance in our system. We have shifted off track, right? The moment we come back on track, the disease will not have any hold in us. What manifests in our life? Today, we are responsible for everything that is manifesting in our life. So, what is creating the manifestation? We are creating the manifestation. Now, if something is manifesting in our lives and we do not accept it, then we are creating a problem for ourselves. So, like a disease, if you're not accepting it, you're attempting to fight it, despising it, wanting to get rid of it, then healing becomes a problem. But the moment you accept it, you adapt to it, and then you transcend it, you can take care of literally any disease. Okay, every disease also comes into our system to teach us something. So the moment we learn the lesson, the disease has no more power over us.
Sorry. Unfortunately, even the tantric attitude can be dangerous. As one accumulates power, the ego will balloon out unless the personality is continuously incinerated simultaneously. Hence, Tantra's insistence that power be objectified and personified. Since tantric ritual can be used to create emotions which did not previously exist, perhaps adoption of the tantric attitude can prove therapeutic for those many today who suffer from emotional paralysis. Hence, Vimlananda's insistence on the greatness of motherly love.
So as again, Shivangla, your speaker, please. Okay, so now ego is the biggest issue, right? Now, as we develop powers, like even when you're using the reball, one of the things that I would caution new excursion graduates is that it will start working and then you'll start, the ego will kick in that, I can heal it by using the reball. And that's when it will stop working for you. So you have to get rid of the ego. So even in Tantra, this is what happens with why the left side of Tantra is so uh, you know uh, abhorred, in the sense that they get egoistic and they start using it for things which they should not use it for, because that all stems from ego. They start feeling very powerful and they become egoistic about it. So what he says over here is that if you put the power in the hands of something else, then you say that that person is doing the work, not you. So you can transcend the ego. So where he says, Tantras insist that the power be objectified and personified. So over here, Vimlananda says that the mother is doing everything. We are only making a request to the mother to handle it. So in the same way, when we are using the reball, we say that you go into an altered state of consciousness and set an intent over there and allow the universe to do what it wants to do. So what are you doing? Now you're taking away the ego from that. That means you're not doing it. You are allowing the universe to do it. So we are objectifying the universal consciousness to do our work for us rather than us doing it ourselves. So again, in Tantra also, you shift it to someone else, the power to something else. So that does the work and you are not doing the work.
From the strictly spiritual point of view, a study of true Tantra would provide Westerners a proper perspective with which to consider their own spiritual practices. For example, they might begin to regard Kundalini with greater respect after learning of the effects of her complete awakening. Or consider the millions who repeat mantras daily. Most are ignorant of the requirements for mantra siddhi and so will repeat the mantra sincerely for years with very little result. Whereas, with a little attention to tantric teachings, they could make quick progress by learning such things as
So,
A.
1 second. Now, the point here becomes that just doing a mantra is not enough. There is a state of consciousness with which you need to do the mantra. There is a diction with which you need to do the mantra. There is a way in which you need to do the mantra. Now, many people will take a mala and they'll do ram 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 ram, or they'll take a counter and cut 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 cut. Please, I know many people may be here who may be doing that, right? But what is the effect of doing that? Are you doing the mantra, or are you just counting how many times you need to do the mantra? So what is the state of consciousness with which you are doing the mantra will create the result that you will develop from the mantra. So that's why that becomes extremely important. And actually, Kundalini, most of you must have heard of Kundalini. When the Kundalini rises and your system is not ready to take it, it can create all sorts of issues for you. Okay. There is a book, what is it? Spiritual, I'll take out that book. Okay. It's like what problems can be created when you have a spiritual, a spiritual growth, a sudden effect of the energy coming into you, right? Now, if you're not prepared for it, it creates a problem. That's where preparation for all these things becomes very, very important.
With a little attention to tantric teachings, they could make quick progress by learning things such as A. The location in the vocal apparatus where the mantra should be recited along with its proper pronunciation. B. The process of bhut shuddhi and the practice of nyasa, which prepares the body and mind to act as a fit receptacle for the deity. C. The dhyan vidhi or specific visualization appropriate to the mantra. D. The 5 great restrictions, which are reciting the mantra daily the same number of times at the same place at the same time with the same offering while observing strict sexual continence during whatever period is set aside for this purpose. E. The total number of repetitions required, which differs for each mantra. 100,000 is often cited, plus the appropriate number and variety of offerings to the 5 great elements.
So again, let's look at it point wise, A wise. What is the location of the vocalization of the mantra? Now, in resonant tuning, when we are doing it in the excursion, we say you can do the vocalization from here. So where is the vocalization needed to be done? So where should the mantra be vocalized from? Okay, along with the proper pronunciation. Now we have a major problem over here because we really don't have people who can really tell us what is the absolutely correct way in which the mantra needs to be vocalized, or the diction, the rhythm, the melody, how it needs to be done. Okay, everyone, you'll find that if you talk about Om, just the simple Om, you will have hundreds of schools of thought as to how the Om should be done. Now that creates a lot of problems for us. Okay, number one. Number two, the body and mind needs to be prepared. So clarity of thought. What is your thinking process? The body, whether it body is functioning properly. So the food that you're eating, the thoughts that you're having, all that needs to be prepared for proper recitation of the mantra. What is the visualization that you need to do with the mantra? Now, if you really see each of the Devi Devtas that we have in our culture, they are specific. Now, of course, people do not know what was the exact form of the Devi Devtas. Nowadays, you are having Ganesh ji in the form of Krishna ji and all that stuff. So that is actually harming the vibratory frequency of that particular form, the idol. Each idol was made in a specific way. The the uh, the 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 things that the idol had, like if Vishnuji has a shank, he has a gada, he has a chakra, and he has something else, right? So everything had a specific meaning. Now unfortunately we don't have people who are able to tell us that also. Okay, so when you are doing the mantra, the visualization connected with the mantra also needs to be done for proper effectivity. Then, of course, discipline, reciting it in a particular time, in a particular place, in a particular number of times. Okay, all that discipline. You have to be disciplined when you're using the mantra. And of course, the number of times, they say that the mantra gets siddh after repeating it for a specific number of times. Now, each of the mantras had a different number. Thumb rule may they say 1 lakh, right? But it has a different number for each of the mantras. Now, again, there's no one to tell us. So we are actually handicapped because proper data is not available to us. It must be available somewhere, but it is effectively not available to us.
Though Tantra may sometimes seem hopelessly complex and impractical, one is unavoidably filled with awe at the amazing thoroughness and attention to detail, which the ancient sages showed, while promulgating this science. Even if it cannot be instantly commercialized or otherwise exploited in some mundane fashion, Surely Tantra deserves appreciation for its very existence.
So Tantra was very specific, very thorough. Unfortunately, what happened was that the data was transmuted verbally. Proper documentation is not there. It is all experiential. Tantra is extremely experiential. Okay, so that makes it a little more complicated to actually understand everything that needs to be done.
The greatest benefit of the study of Tantra and Aghora is perhaps an enhanced appreciation for motherliness. The doctor who cannot take a motherly attitude towards his patient is a mere pill pusher. My teacher insisted that all males should learn motherly love. Tantra is the worship of mother. It is the most advanced method of inculcating maternal feelings. It is undeniable that as you look to the world, so the world will look to you. If the world is your mother and all its inhabitants your family, there is never need for loneliness, fear, or despair. As my teacher Vimlanand observed frequently when speaking of the mother, what more does one need to do once the mother has accepted him? She will do everything without being asked. She is the being to be realized.
So naturally, again, you have the Ardhanareshwari concept, right? So most of the tantrics were men, the male. So they had to inculcate motherly love or the female factor into the system to become whole. Okay. Ultimately, even in Tantra, you need to transcend the mother also. But ultimately, what is there? You're bringing the motherly love into your system. What are the most important factors over here? Love and compassion. Looking after everything with a mother's view. The mother will always do the best for the child, right? Now, if the mother accepts you, the mother will constantly protect you, constantly give you things that need to be done, right? Now, if you can inculcate that love in yourself, that is the way you will start behaving with everyone around you also.
Introduction. This is the story of the Aghori Vimlanand. An Aghori is a practitioner of the spiritual discipline known as Aghora. The word Aghora can be interpreted as deeper than deep, or as gentle, or filled with light, illumined. Aghora is the apotheosis of Tantra, the Indian religion whose supreme deity is the mother goddess. Tantra has thus far been glimpsed in the West only on its most vulgar and debased forms, promulgated by unscrupulous scoundrels who equate sex with superconsciousness. Sex is indeed central to Tantra, the cosmic sexual union of universal dualities.
So again, what does sex represents? It represents the merging of the male and the female components of the whole. So when the male and female merge, it becomes whole, right? So that's why the sex aspect was promulgated. But it is not, it is that sex act also is from a very much higher state of consciousness. It is not involving any lust or any debauchery kind of situation there. Okay, it's a spiritual act which was being performed for the connection to take place.
Niket, what is apotheosis?
Where is that word?
First paragraph, Aghora is the apotheosis of Tantra.
1 second.
Bhabhi will have to Google it.
Okay, we'll do it later.
Aghora is the apotheosis. It must be the I don't know. We can Google it. But what it feels like is that it is the representation of Tantra, or the
Okay.
the practitioner maybe.
Yeah.
Shimangla?
Yes, sorry. The aim of Tantra is lay, return of the seeker to the state of undifferentiated existence. Actually, Tantra cannot be termed a religion because it is bereft of tenets and dogma. It consists only of methods for achieving this lay or union of the individual with the infinite. This union is described with a sexual metaphor, the union of the personal ego, which is female, with the absolute male. Under special circumstances, sexual rituals are employed in Tantra to hasten spiritual progress, but the concept of licentiousness is totally foreign to the Tantric tradition.
So again, as I already mentioned, right, it is only to create the connection, the merger of the male and the female. Over here, he says that the female is the ego and the male is the absolute male. The like Shivji is absolute male. So where is that union coming? That union, and it consists of methods of achieving this layer. So again, that's why I said it is very, very experiential. Okay, anything goes, provided it is done with a clear conscious awareness of what the aim is to achieve. So what is the consciousness with which you are operating?
The meaning I have looked up the highest point in the development of something, a culmination or climax, the elevation of someone to divine status.
Okay.
It's the essence of Tantra.
Tantra has been divided into right hand and left hand paths. The right hand path involves a search for the unlimited reality via the road of external imposition of purity. While its practices may seem strange to some, its emphasis on personal purity will be familiar to those in the West who know of Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and the Raj Yoga, all of which conform more or less to orthodox ideals of religious discipline.
So actually, everything that we do in religion is a part of Tantra. So you have the left-handed path, which is the quick path, and you have the right-handed path, which is the slow path. So through bhakti, you go evolve slowly. Okay. But through the normal tantric processes, the left-handed path, you evolve very fast.
The left hand path has attracted attention to itself by the actions of those unwise souls who seek quick and easy spiritual development without any preliminary renunciation of sensory gratification. The result of such rashness is invariably indulgence of the worst and most blatant sort, which has damaged the left hand path's reputation.
So again, when you're going on the left-hand path, detachment has to be there. You're doing a process for a certain aim, which is spiritual growth. It is not for indulgence. But what some people start doing is that they use the process for indulgence, for sensual gratification, for sensory pleasures. That becomes a problem.
The left hand path relies on its practitioners' absolute internal purity to protect them while they practice rituals which may involve necromancy, intoxicants, sex, or other forbidden practices. Most serious aspirants automatically shun the left hand path because of its potential for misuse, which is indeed great.
So again,
It,
to be shifted out of the left hand path is very easy. Number one, it gives you great power very quickly, and number two, it authorizes things like sexual intercourse and all that stuff, which can really shift you very easily. So that's why most people, they don't like to go on that path. Okay.
it is truly treacherous for the unwary. One text observes that walking on swords or riding a tiger is child's play by comparison. Ironically, those undisciplined individuals who cannot succeed at the left hand path are naturally attracted to it by the potential for unbridled indulgence it seems to proffer. While those sincere seekers who might eventually succeed at it are frightened away by its temptations.
So it's like walking on the razor's edge. It's extremely easy to fall off, right? And get contaminated. So a person who's walking the left hand path has to be extremely cautious and diligent about everything that they are doing. Now, naturally, some unscrupulous people also indulge in it, and the others, because they feel that it's very easy to fall off, they don't want to indulge in it. So again, that's why the contamination of the left hand path has totally taken place in our minds also.
There are a few, though, who do dare and who successfully complete the rigorous left-hand training requisite to purify the aspirant through and through. Only when purity is perfected is the aspirant assigned rituals which to the untutored observer might seem hedonistic or sinful. Aghora is not indulgence. It is the forcible transformation of darkness into light, of the opacity of the limited individual personality into the luminescence of the absolute. Renunciation disappears once you arrive at the absolute because then nothing remains to renounce.
Okay, this is important here. So again, strict renunciation is a prerequisite, extreme enough to purify the aspirant through and through. So it means that in body, mind, emotion, thoughts, everything needs to be operating at a real pure state of consciousness before you indulge in these processes. Now, let us say a tantric is going and sitting on a corpse, but what is the state of consciousness with which that they are doing that practice is very different from the way that we would go and do it, right? So that purity of consciousness becomes very important. Otherwise, the practice may seem very hideous, okay? Because we don't understand what that practice is all about. So that's why that clarity of mind, that purity of mind, that equanimity of mind, body, and soul becomes very important. And then once the merger takes place, if you merge with the absolute, then you are the absolute. There is nothing left to renounce after that. If duality is transcended, then what can you renounce? Because you are everything and you are nothing at the same time.
An Aghori goes so deeply into darkness, into all things undreamable to ordinary mortals, that he comes out into light. Sects in India are often distinguished by color of turban or drape of robe. Popularly, Aghoris have been stereotyped as ash-swathed ascetics with long matted hair who walk through life wild-eyed, skulking about in charnel grounds, wrestling sorry, one second. Wrestling with jackals for carcasses. The title Aghori is claimed by some groups who even assert an exclusive right to it.
So
Vimlanand had his own.
mostly agoris, because they do not want to indulge in normal interaction with people, they actually smear their own feces on their body. They smear ash on their body because they don't want people to come into their consciousness and create a flutter in their consciousness. Okay. Now, of course, then ego again starts coming in. Groupism also comes in. In the Kumbh Mela, the first people who are allowed to go into the sea are the Aghoris.
River.
Oh, sorry, into the river, into the Sangam, are the Aghoris. They are the first people who are allowed to go into the ocean, into the river.
Vimlanand had his own definition of Aghori, which was independent of any doctrine or dogma. Indeed, his usage of terms like Vedic and Tantric may also be devoid of detectable textual support, for he never cared for texts. He believed, and it is a noble Indian tradition to do so, that a lineage's practices prevail over textual injunctions.
So now what does this mean? Now this again says that most of these practices were physically experienced. They were experiential. So they could not be put in text. Now one person's experience can be used by another person's experience. So like in the excursion, we always say that learn from each other's experience. Do not expect the same experience. So like that, when you are doing a lineage gets created because of its practices, right? But over a period of time, you have to adjust the practice to your nature, to your character. That's why if you write something down, then you've written it. Now you can't change it. But minute micro adjustment of the processes for each student needs to be made. This was the beauty of our Gurukul system, where students of all ages used to study together, and the guru used to monitor what was the lesson to be given to which student depending on their nature, their character, and their development, right? So this is the same thing that he's talking about here.
Whatever you believe yourself to be, you are. If you are sincere and honest enough, you are responsible for yourself, and your opinion of yourself is authoritative.
So now this is extremely important. Knowing yourself, what are you? What are your capabilities? If you can really make a non-judgmental assessment of yourself, that is a very, very important thing. Most of the time we get caught up in ego. So over here, when he's talking about it, a sincere and honest enough judgment of yourself or assessment of yourself, it means that there is no ego involved. You are actually accepting what you are. Okay. And then what that does is that it allows you to take responsibility for yourself. Robert Monroe also says in the Gateway Voyage that you need to be responsible for yourself. In Zero Limits, you are responsible for everything that is happening to you. You are responsible for it. The problem is we always start playing the blame game. We start telling that it happened because of this guy or that guy, or this person didn't do this or this or that, we are shirking the responsibility that we need to take.
This attitude often irritates those who have invested heavily in the infallibility of any one text or group of texts. But then, Vimlanand had no use for organized religion anyway.
So now, one truth, I mean, there is one truth ultimately, but one process will not work for everyone. There's a concept of time, place, and person. What may be right in one place may not be right in another place. What may be right for one person may not be right for another person. What may be right at one time may not be right at another time. So if someone says that no, what is written in my text is the ultimate truth and no other truth exists, big problem. Always my ghanti baj jata hai. Okay, my process is the best. There is nothing better than that. And there can never be anything better than that. Big problem with me. Yes, I may definitely say that this is the best process I've experienced till now. Tomorrow I may experience something better. I don't know. But this is the ultimate. That becomes a big problem. Okay. So many people naturally, if I'm shifting around, if I'm doing all sorts of things, people will get irritated who are following one paddhati.
As you read his story, remember that what he called Vedic might not necessarily be Vedic to a temple priest, but that both opinions might be equally valid according to context.
So again, it's always a perspective.
Throughout his life, Vimlanand resisted any attempt to fit him into any mold. He guarded his originality jealously. He was without doubt distinctly individual, but simultaneously he was exceedingly difficult to pin down and define.
Now, once you are defined, then you are stuck. You've created a box around yourself. Now, getting out of the box becomes very difficult. So, we create labels for ourselves and then we have to adhere to that label. This person is nice. Okay. So, now that person has to be nice all the time. So, naturally, an Aghori will not want to be tied down to any kind of a label.
What we speak of in this book as Aghora is solely according to Vimlanand's teachings. He studied many systems and selected elements from each, Bhakti Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, and others, and melded them into a tool which he employed to advance himself.
So now again, all of us need to learn stuff from various processes. And then ultimately, we will need to create our own process, because what works for you works for you. Okay, this is extremely important. That's why it's important to take a taste of various things and then create that a new process, which is your process at the end of the day.
He believed that each individual should carve out his own niche, study what he or she could understand, select those practices which they could sincerely do, and do them faithfully. So, by this definition, Aghora would always be different from everyone. Only the Aghori's attitude would be held in common.
So this is a very important statement. Only the Aghori's attitude which be held in common. So what is the state of mind? What is the state of consciousness with which an Aghori operates? That is what is common. The practices, the processes may be totally different for each Aghori.
Each Aghori would follow different practices, but all Aghoris follow them with the same intensity and disregard for self preservation.
So now each Aghori follows them with the same intensity. That means they are really committed to what they are doing. They are one-minded. Once they've decided that this is the path I'm taking, they will stick to it, regardless of any harm that might come, right? So they become very one-pointed in their direction. So the wavering is not there once they've taken a decision. Now, because they've understood that this life or this body is not permanent, naturally they don't care about hurting or damaging the body.
To Vimlanand, the true Aghori cannot be recognized by any external sign or mark. Experience in the world of ascetics had taught him that many fake Aghoris lurk under outward appurtenances, and he stoutly maintained that the true Aghora is wholly internal.
So now what happens? External signs are display, okay, but what is the internal state of consciousness? What is the internal state of being? That is what is the most important thing. Even for us, what is the consciousness which we are operating? What is the state of being that we are operating from? That is what is more important. The external, the tam jham is all a facade which can drop at any time. Okay, we just create that for the world. But what are we inside is what is more important.
Sectarian Aghoris might well take issue with this opinion, but Vimlanand lived up to it. He lived in an ordinary flat in Bombay and went about his business inconspicuously. Inside, he was pure Aghori, as hard as diamonds or as soft as wax, as the situation demanded. To his spiritual children, he was the perfect mother, a combination of friend, philosopher, and guide. To those who, with inflated spiritual egos, he was merciless.
So again, you are hard and soft at the same time. So according to the situation, according to the circumstances, you adjust what you are. The Aghori is not stuck, right? The Aghori is always very flexible.
One immutable tenet of Aghora is that death is to be personified and deified. Aghoris crave not for physical death, but for destruction of all their limitations, killing themselves by internal or external processes.
So what does this mean? That anything which is not working for the Aghori, which is not leading to spiritual growth, they want to simply slaughter it. They want to kill it. They want to get rid of it. Okay. They don't want to hang on to it. So it's like carrying rocks in your backpack. We keep talking about this. So any kind of thing which is a rock in your backpack, you don't need. So anything which is hindering the spiritual growth of the Aghori is like a rock in the backpack. They want to get rid of it.
Aghoris do not fear death. Once embarked upon a course of action, the true Aghori either succeed or dies trying. For there is no middle ground and no retreat.
So again, one pointed focus. Once they've decided to do something, to shift them out of that focus becomes very, very difficult.
Aghoris love to spend time in cemeteries and burning grounds, collectively called smashan in Hindi. An Aghori is never happier than when he is seated intoxicated in the smashan, performing a ritual near a funeral pyre, flames shooting up to lick the midnight blackness. Vimlanand, so concerned with external propriety in other ways, never hesitated to visit the smashan when he had rituals to perform.
So again, some ritual, again, time, place, and person, right? So you need a certain process, you need a certain purpose to be achieved. So where you will do it, how you will do it, when you will do it, again starts playing a game. So an Aghori will never be scared to perform a ritual anywhere and in any form. Okay. If he has to be naked, if he has to sit on something, he has to jump out of a window, whatever needs to be done to perform the ritual or to perform the end or achieve the end that they are looking for, they will fearlessly do it.
Some of the events described in this book may well offend the reader's sensitivities. Part of this was Vimlanand's intention. He wanted Western holier than thou renunciates to know that filth and orgies in the graveyard, as one American once described Aghora, can be as conducive to spiritual advancement as can asanas, pranayam, and other purer disciplines. But another part is intrinsic to Aghora. In many ways, it is and must remain totally incomprehensible to the ordinary person, and for some people, no amount of explanation will satisfy when they question the wisdom or the spiritual benefit inherent in, say, consumption of human brain. Aghora is mysterious and deep, deeper than deep, in fact, and only those who can lay aside all their cultural clothing and plunge into it naked can dive into its depths.
So understanding the process, unless you understand the process as an outsider, it becomes very difficult to really comprehend it. Okay. So for example, I keep telling people attend the excursion, right? I can write it and give it to you. Anyone who's attended the excursion will tell you to attend the excursion. But if you ask them what is it, they'll find it very difficult to explain. Why? Because it's totally experiential. In the same way, all the Aghora practices are experiential. What is the state of consciousness with which you are doing it? What is the aim with which you are doing it? What is the end result of that? Unless you have experienced it, it becomes very difficult to understand. So that's why people who don't understand are kept away from it. Okay.
But the aim of all this is to reach to the higher, this thing in the same, it's the same. You're reaching it from by the left hand or the right hand.
Correct.
But
Absolutely right, Auntie. Absolutely right. So the rituals are taking you into a higher state of consciousness, right? But we do not understand those rituals. That's why for us, it can become very like if an Aghora is drinking alcohol from the skull of a skull. Now, for us, it would seem very dirty. But why is he doing it? And whether in his state of perception or consciousness that is a skull of a human being or not, how are we to comprehend that?
yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So again,
Yeah.
it's a matter of perception. Now, today someone walks into the room and he starts feeling very cold, but you're sitting in the room and you're feeling hot. Now, whose perception is correct?
We don't know.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay.
When Vimlanand and I were in America, one of my friends asked him, as much as I have read about you and heard about you and now listen to you, I still cannot understand what an Aghori is. Would you please try to explain it to me? Vimlanand told me later. She asked me so honestly. She asked me so honestly and earnestly that I felt I had to reply eloquently, even though this is not something you can put into so many words. He told her, an Aghori is beyond the bound of the earthly shackles, nay, something above the elements which shape the universe and you.
So he is beyond the material aspect of the universe.
He takes a short sort of intoxicant and thus gets intoxicated in supreme love, which emanates from the innermost recesses of his heart.
So what is this saying? He is out of the brain. Okay, the brain is where the logic resides. The heart is where the feeling resides, where the love resides. And that means that the Aghora is constantly operating from the heart.
Shall I call it interiority? It is that which is beyond awareness.
So it is beyond awareness, right? So you're consciously there, but not there at the same time. So you're just is.
It is that which is beyond awareness. He gives off the best part of love. Why part? Part of the supreme, universal love, where one experiences with the help of perception. All in one in all.
So that love, which is totally holistic, okay, totally in wholeness, totally in oneness, one in all. I am everything and nothing at the same time.
When you, the finite, merge into infinity, what dost thou not know? During the stage, he merges with his own deity so that he becomes him. Capital H. That is why he is said to have gone from darkness to divine enlightenment. This is an Aghori.
So when everything is personified in the deity, right? And when the Aghori merges with the deity, then there is no duality left. There is nothing left, right? So it is again nothing and everything at the same time.
Vimlanand was an extremist. He was certain that anything worth doing was worth doing well, and he was ready to stake his all to ensure that whatever he began was completed. For him, Aghora was the doctrine of no return, a personal creed which demanded relinquishing all in exchange for divine love.
So again, fearlessness, one pointed concentration, and and an intent to complete whatever you start. Okay, you don't leave it halfway.
He wanted to warn spiritual dilettantes in the West that the frivolity with which they treat discipline and the self delusion they attempt to pass off as enlightenment is merely a cheating of their own consciousness, which leads only to the pit. For example, when I was once unwise enough to comment that a certain guru was supposedly awakening his disciples, Kundalinis, by boffing them with a peacock feather duster, Vimlanand exploded in reply. Has the Kundalini Shakti become so cheap that some so called God man can awaken it in multitudes of people all at once? Oh no! Were our rishis, ancient seers, fools to spend decades out in the jungles working at hard penances to awaken Kundalini and to perfect Aghora? No, the people who think they can buy Kundalini are the fools. Westerners think they can purchase knowledge, but all they get for their money is fake teachers from India who dish out any slop to them and get rich on their gullibility.
So again, it's a process, right? And it's not something that something and just, it's not a janam guti ki घोट के पिला दिया और हो गया. Especially Kundalini is not like that.
Vimlanand conformed to none of the usual guru stereotypes. When at the races, he dressed like the horse owner he was, and when at home, he dressed like an ordinary Indian.
So again, no uniform. The Aghori doesn't have a uniform that I will dress in this particular way. They'll dress in any way they want.
He ate meat on occasion, used intoxicants frequently, and smoked cigarettes incessantly.
So
He did
again, nothing is nishad in the culture. Eating meat depending on the requirement. Okay. The Aghori had the ability to transmute and transform anything what they consumed into what they needed. So the intoxicant would become water in their belly, that kind of situation.
He did all these things for specific but hidden reasons. Most of the people who knew him only formally never suspected that he might be of a spiritual bent. He cultivated this carefree image deliberately to avoid attracting attention to himself. I had been brainwashed by spiritual authorities to expect a certain role from a guru. Fortunately for me, I soon learned that Vimlanand's revulsion towards hypocrisy and posturing was exceeded in strength only by his obstinacy. At one time, he had actively attempted to speed certain persons along the spiritual path, but was unsuccessful with them due to their unpreparedness. He thereupon determined to provide real tools for spiritual cultivation only to those students whom he had first thoroughly tested and prepared. Hence, he never referred to himself as a guru, nor did he act in the way we have come to expect gurus to act. For example, when he chose to call me Ravi, he did so because it cognate with my nickname Robbie, and it was more convenient to use while speaking in an Indian language. It was not because he wanted to impress me by giving me some Sanskrit name.
So again, an
He made a
Aghori,
show of
again, 1 second. Again, a true Aghori will never do anything to attempt to impress someone. They'll do it because they want to do it. It's very simple. I think we can stop here, Shivangla.
okay.
Or you want to finish this page? Finish this page.
He made a show of complete disinterest in teaching while actually spending much time evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of each of his spiritual children. This Indian tradition is known as Kurma Guru, literally tortoise teacher. After a mother tortoise buries her eggs on a sandy beach, it is said that she retreats a certain distance and then concentrates on those eggs with such an intense current of love that the warmth of her love reaches the eggs and causes them to hatch. In the same way, a Kurma Guru seems to pay no attention to his disciples' progress, but in reality monitors them closely and sometimes pulls their strings from afar.
So this is very important. Okay. Assessing the student, whether the student is ready, and giving the teachings required for the student's spiritual growth. Not just, like now we have in the classrooms, all the students are doing the same lecture, whether they are in any level of intelligence or competency, etc., was not the way of teaching Aghora.
Vimlanand's entire life was teaching and being taught. He was always ready to learn something new and always ready to teach in his own way, if a student was sincerely willing to learn. His day to day life was a lesson for whoever could understand it, a continual resubmission of his will to the divine will.
So again, a true Aghori will always be ready to learn. When anyone says that I know everything, that person is dead, right? Because there is so much to learn that we can continuously learn all the time. And personally, for me, I'm attempting to learn all the time, to do new things all the time, and to, because everything has its own flavor. You don't know what will build into your own repertoire of whatever information and knowledge you have, whatever experiences you have. So experiencing continuously becomes extremely important. if we want to grow. Okay. And of course, the best way to learn is to teach. So if you know something, spread the knowledge. That becomes
But
very, very important.
this Kurma Guru is not the correct this thing. You know, Kurma, I mean, these daughters, it's a reptilian brain. They just lay the eggs and they go away. They don't watch anything or anywhere.
No, this is the. I mean, of course, he's saying it over here, but maybe they do it also, Auntie. How do we know? Have you studied
I know.
tortoises?
I know. You know, in my daughter's garden, a
Yeah.
tortoise had given this thing and she went away. She laid the eggs, she rested for a while and she went away.
Yeah.
These things hatched on its own.
Correct.
And I was worried about them. But then my daughter, she studied the whole
Yeah,
thing.
the reptiles generally don't worry. You're right.
Yeah.
But this may be happening. I don't know. Somewhere it may
But
be
here
happening.
it says, here it says, the kurma goes away and from long distance, it is sending love to those eggs.
Yeah.
No,
So
but
we don't know whether they are really doing, so they could be doing it also.
No,
That's what
reptilian
I'm
brain
saying.
doesn't
We've not
We don't know
studied the turtles enough to really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because no, the midbrain only gets the love and the emotions. The reptilian brain has no emotions. Anyway,
how does it matter, Auntie?
it doesn't. Yeah. And I love the word kurma.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a little tight just now, but when the story comes, after the introduction, then it becomes easier. Anyone, any comment?
Okay.
At the end of it, it's all about being true to yourself. At the end of the day, when you look at it, if I sum it up in few words, it's being true to yourself and doing whatever needs to be done at the time and place it needs to be done. That's all.
Absolutely. Thank you.
In this we said that
someone is speaking. I don't know who's speaking.
Kumud.
Yeah, you have to speak up.
today it was much easier than last time.
It will become easier, I can guarantee. Once the story starts coming, it's very easy. And it's pretty interesting also.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the fact, you see, we need to get the essence of the fact that the Aghori is one-pointed. He will do whatever needs to be done to get the job done. Now, just imagine if we could also be like that. Be totally emitting love all the time. Doing the best for everyone around us. Being true to ourselves. Not having a facade. Being exactly what we are. And saying what needs to be said in the way that it needs to be said, to whom it needs to be said, right?
Yeah.
So he said very clearly that some people who were egoistic, he used to bombard them. Someone who came with love, he used to deal with them with love, right? So how do you deal with a particular person? What is the consciousness with which you deal with it? That becomes extremely important in everything that we do. Okay,
So
non-selfishness. That becomes very important.
One thing, Niket, I definitely want to say that, of course, we all are human and we all have different emotions at different times. But definitely being aware makes a lot of difference.
Absolutely. That is the game. No? When you do things with awareness, that is what creates the shift. Now, of course, you can decide that I want to do the wrong thing. But if you're operating out of that equanimity, that deeper state of well-being, that wholeness, then you'll not land up doing the wrong thing. It's as simple as that.
Or you immediately realize that, okay, I should have done this. I shouldn't have said like this.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So realization and then transition. Anyone, anything before we close?
No. Ram. Thank you.
Hello.
Ram.
Yeah. Who's speaking?
Yeah, Ruchira.
Yeah, Ruchira.
I wanted to ask, Aghori